The Committee on Public Education will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Chair Buckley.
Here.
Vice Chair Allen.
Present.
Allison.
Here.
Cunningham. Dutton. Harris.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
Hefner.
Here.
Hinojosa.
Here.
King.
Here.
Longoria.
Present.
Schaefer. Talarico.
All right. A quorum is present. As a reminder, anyone present wishing to testify before the committee, please register at the kiosks located in the hallways behind the hearing rooms. If you require assistance in registering or testifying, please speak to the committee staff. Please be aware there'll be a time limit of 3 minutes per witness during the public testimony period. We actually have a fancy new timer there. And so we are really moving on up here in Pub Ed today. And so with that, members, we'll begin the first bill on our agenda. Let's see here. Chair lays out HCR 90 and recognizes Chairman Kemple to explain his resolution.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. This is a concurrent resolution filed to make April 6th for the next 10 years Texas High School Coaches Day. I was telling some of the people in the back, seriously, we don't already have that? I mean, you're talking about a group that's probably the most influential group on millions of kids over the last, well, forever and going forward. Most influential group in those 4 years that they have, and probably the most impressionable years that those children have to become young adults and being molded by our high school coaches. I'm a high school athlete and, you know, can name all my coaches way faster than I can name all my teachers. I promise you that. But it does mean a lot to me that we're bringing this today. Big part of my life, big part of everybody's life up here. And you talk about a group that deserves it. It's this one.
You bet.
So I ask for the right to close, Mr. Buckley.
You bet, absolutely. Members, any questions for Chairman Kemple? Yeah, all right.
I'm not showing any witnesses.
Oh, okay, there are no witnesses, and we're not seeing any questions. I want to thank you for bringing this measure forward. As a grandson of a high school football coach, and certainly had very many important coaches in my life that I'm like you. I can name most of them, and many of them I keep in contact today. This is a worthy designation for folks that really put in a lot of time helping young people.
That's right. I do the same, and I was just talking to Coach Honeycutt last week. I mean,
okay. All right.
it means a lot.
You bet. All right. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
You bet.
I'll close.
All right.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah.
Well, it looks like sorry, we actually
Hold up. Okay. Is it anyone? Hold up just one second.
Back up, members.
Okay, yeah, back up. So we're not going to close. Do we have a witness registered?
Do we have Coach Martin?
Okay.
not registered, but we can just registered.
Just registered. Okay.
Let's
Sorry about that.
refresh and try to- Look at that. We have one person ready
Okay.
to testify.
There you go.
All right.
I'll be back up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Got a little ahead of ourselves there. Okay. No further questions. We'll proceed to testimony. Chair calls Joe Martin, Texas High School Association. Excuse me, High School Coaches Association.
Good morning.
All right. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Joe Martin on behalf of the Texas High School Coaches Association, testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Buckley, committee members. My name is Joe Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Texas High School Coaches Association. I'm here this morning on behalf of our Board of Directors and our 25,000 members, really to thank Chairman Kemple and Chairman Buckley and this committee for your work to establish a day to celebrate our Texas high school coaches on an annual basis. As a career coach myself, I know the dedication, the time, and the passion our coaches in the state of Texas put into growing our youth of Texas. You know, Billy Graham once said, a coach will impact more people in 1 year than an average person will in a lifetime. A single coach will influence thousands of players over his and her career. We're very proud of the job our coaches do in Texas, as their influential power is not only evident during competition, on the field, on the court, on the track, on the diamond, but also as they coach beyond the game to develop the next set of leaders in this state. Coaches fill many roles in our schools and their players' lives. They are coaches, they're mentors, they're role models. These roles carry significant sacrifices, responsibilities, and our coaches embrace all of that. We need our great coaches to continue to impact the lives of their student athletes across the state of Texas, not only as at the state championship volleyball matches, but also at that rivalry game on Friday night, but also in the classroom where our coaches, our high school coaches, also serve as educators for our Texas students. Coaching is demanding and rewarding. With the establishment of this day, you recognize the demands and highlight those rewards. On behalf of Texas High School Coaches Association, I want to express our appreciation and our gratitude for the tireless work that you do, for each of you that you do for our public school students, educators, and coaches across the state. I ask that you support HCR 90 to create an annual celebration of all coaches in the state of Texas. Thank you very much.
All right, members, any questions for this witness? All right. Thank you, Coach. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
All right, anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HCR 90? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Kimball to close on the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity. Look forward to your favorable consideration. I'll close.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there no objection? If there's no objection, the resolution will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The resolution is left pending. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Here we go. We're ready to roll on this one? Okay. All right. Chair lays out House Bill 1507 and recognizes Chairman King to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 1507. Members, House Bill 1507 seeks to set sanctions against traditional ISDs and open enrollment charter schools and/or employees who host a program dedicated to celebrating or providing special instruction regarding sexual preference. Sanctions include a fine, termination, or suspension of a teacher's permit and other sanctions deemed appropriate by the State Board of Educator certification. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions and reserve my right to close.
All right. Thank you. Members, any questions for Chairman King?
I have a question.
All right. Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you, Chairman King. I have a few questions. What is the inspiration for this bill? What made you first think of this?
I think what made me first think of it is complaints to my office that there are sexually oriented celebrations going on in our school districts.
What does that mean, a sexually oriented celebration?
I guess it means any celebrations celebrating sexuality of any kind.
So the language in the bill is very broad, and it says regarding sexual preference. You said sexuality of any kind. So, you know, we are human beings. We're all sexual beings, right? We all have sexual preferences. And it strikes me that, for instance, would this ban the celebration of prom, right? Because you have a date, you have a sexual preference, it's a celebration. I mean, it's written so broadly that I'm not quite understanding what is the intent.
Well, I don't think it would ban things like proms or those kind of things. What I think it would do would stop a school district, an open enrollment charter school, from spending a week in instructing kids in a sexual preference instead of teaching school.
But what do you mean instructing kids in a sexual preference?
I think that's what I mean. There's no other explanation, Ms. Hinojosa. I think that's what we're doing, and I think everybody needs to stop instructing kids in sexual preference, no matter what your ideology is, and focus on teaching kids.
And so is the purpose of your bill to stop any LGBTQ pride events in public schools?
Purpose of my bill is to stop any events of a sexual nature. My bill is explicit, stays away from naming any group. Now, if a group feels like they're being named, then the bill would probably include them, but I don't. My bill doesn't talk about that.
Do you know which school districts in Texas are problematic in your view in terms of celebrating sexual, what did you call it, sexual preference?
I think any school district or open enrollment charter school that engages in these type of celebrations are a problem.
So your bill is not specifically aimed at banning Pride, ISD Pride weeks?
My bill is very consistent. We don't name a group in it. Any sexually oriented celebration would be prohibited under this bill. It doesn't say anything about one group or another. You can ask me that as many times you want to, and that's going to be my answer. And I don't mind answering as many times you want to ask, but that's what the bill says.
Well, it's vaguely written. It's a vague answer. So I'm trying to, and since the consequences are so severe for teachers, loss of their teaching certification, I fear that we're going to immobilize teachers from celebrating all sorts of things and just kind of freely celebrating our communities, our children, and our families. And that's why I'm trying to pin down exactly what it is you are trying to prohibit.
I think having sexually oriented celebrations at school for all grades is teaching our kids a sexual ideology, no matter who's doing it. And a few years ago, we passed a bill about inappropriate student-teacher relationships. I think when you're teaching first graders, an adult's teaching a first grader their worldview of sexuality, that's an inappropriate relationship. I think that should be done in the home.
Is your bill intended to ban any mention of LGBTQ students in school?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't say anything about that.
So is there a compelling state interest at stake here in Texas that you are trying to protect by prohibiting this type of activity or speech or expression in schools?
I think one of the things we're trying to protect are traditional public schools and open enrollment charter schools. And, whether it doesn't matter what group it is, indoctrination is a thing. And, we need to stop all of it and go back to teaching schools and protect our traditional ISDs.
So the way I read this is that one of the intended events that's targeted for being banned is pride events in our ISDs. And is that one of the events that you intend?
I suppose it could be. That's not what the bill says.
Okay. So do you understand? So I represent the Austin ISD School District. They do have a pride event. Mm-hmm. And the purpose, and their stated purpose of this is to create a, quote, safe, supportive, and inclusive environment for students, all students. I think that's so important.
But Ms. Hinojosa, not all students feel safe and included in every celebration.
What do you mean?
Well, that's exactly what I mean. Just there's a community of kids or teachers or whatever are saying this is for everybody to feel included. Well, what about the kids that don't want to be included in that, or the parents that don't want their kids to be included in whatever? That's what the bill's for. So to say it's for all kids when it's just flat not for all kids. It's not for all parents didn't get to choose that their kids participate in whatever event. And if there's an event going on and a first grader comes home with a sticker that goes against what the child's being taught at home, that first grader doesn't know what that sticker means. They know they got a free sticker. And so it's not inclusive of all kids. Nothing really is.
To say that we support and accept everybody is not inclusive of all kids?
To say that all kids want to participate in a celebration of any kind of a sexual nature is not true. All kids don't want to.
So, Representative King, did you go to high school with kids who were gay or you suspected were gay?
I probably did.
because I did. And when I was in high school, I graduated in 92, it was acceptable to bully and make fun of and ridicule gay people. And it was out of ignorance, and I participated in it. And I have shame about that. What I love about what we do with these pride events is that we educate our kids and our families so that ignorance doesn't exist, and so that all our kids feel that they are welcomed, they are part of a community, and accepted.
And I appreciate your feelings on the subject. My feelings are, as a parent, teaching my child to be accepting and how to view the world outside of our own lens is my job. It's not a school district's job. It's not a teacher's job. And not every teacher is going to be happy about having to do this. Listen, this bill specifically doesn't talk about one community or another, and you're trying to make it about that. I want it to be about none of that. I want kids to learn to read, write, do their math, go to school. Now, I was a joint author on David's Law. I've taken a huge stance around here on bullying. That's not what this bill's about. This bill is about keeping sexually oriented celebrations out of our classrooms, because what we hear from teachers, and you hear it too, we don't have time to teach because of the STAR test. We don't have time to do anything because we're overworked, but we have time to celebrate a sexually oriented holiday. That's, to me, that's not right. Now, listen, if the bill is too broad and you have something you think would help, I'm more than willing to take a suggestion, but that's my opinion on the bill. The bill is very short. That's what it does.
All right. Representative Talarico?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman King. I know Representative Hinojosa asked you a few questions. I just want to follow up on some of them. I'm also, surprised again that we're in the pub ed hearing talking about sex. Hopefully that will come to a close soon and we can get back to education policy. But I want to ask you about sexual preference. So the only place I could find, because it's not defined in your bill, sexual preference, so the only place I could find it in code is in the Code of Criminal Procedure. Sexual preference has the following meaning only: a preference for heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality. And yet, and you said it earlier, any sexuality would be under this, not just one. Is that?
That was the intent.
Okay, good. So I just want to focus on heterosexuality then for a moment. If I'm understanding your bill, and it would ban all celebrations of sexuality of any kind, does that mean your bill would ban celebrations of Valentine's Day?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't recall there being weeks dedicated to celebrating Valentine's Day.
Well, under your bill, no district could celebrate any kind of holiday or celebration that involves human sexuality.
Honestly, Mr. Talarico, that is not the intent of the bill, and I know where you're going with this, but if it's a choice between banning it all and just teaching school, or continuing down the path our school districts are on, I would stand with banning it all and supporting our teachers.
So banning celebrations of Valentine's Day in public schools?
If that's what this body chose to do, I would not stop it. What I would say, that is not the intent of the bill. The bill was written, it is written broadly. And I fully admit that it was written broadly for a reason, to have just this discussion. No bill ends like it starts.
Sure.
To be fair. So as I said to Ms. Hinojosa, if you've got language that would protect a holiday like Valentine's Day, if that's one that is important to you, I would accept the language. I think I've been clear about the spirit and the intent of the bill, and it wasn't necessarily for prom, and it wasn't necessarily for Valentine's Day. But if it is written broadly where it would affect those things, I would be glad to take a suggestion.
Okay. The other things that I'm also concerned about, school dances. I think Representative Hinojosa talked about prom. The other things, I've seen sometimes viral videos, very heartwarming videos of teachers getting proposed to at school, sometimes in class, sometimes kids, elementary school kids are involved in the proposal, right? Seems very heartwarming, but it seems like at least under the current language, I'm glad you're open to clarifying it. Something like that, if it's hosted on school grounds, would be in violation of the current language.
Well, and once again, that is certainly not the intent. And if there's a way to tighten it up, to drill down on those things, please submit some language to me and we'll talk about it.
Okay, I appreciate that, Chairman. Because I want to talk about pride, because that's kind of how I'm interpreting the bill, as maybe that's what it's going after. And you said, Representative Hinojosa, that's also not the intent. Is that fair?
I would say that any sexually oriented celebrations is what the bill says. Now, if Pride Week is caught up in that, fine. But I didn't specify one group over another, and nor will I.
Okay.
There's no way I'm bringing a bill for this body that singles out a group. Now, if a group singles himself out, that's self-identifying. That is not what this bill says.
Right, because things like Valentine's Day or Pride are not about sex. Oftentimes they're about relationships. They're about celebrating others. And so that's why I just want to make sure we're not going after those things. Chairman, this is maybe a strange question, but I'm leading somewhere, so bear with me. But do you believe that being gay is a choice?
What does that have to do with this bill?
Excuse me?
Do you believe that being gay is a choice?
Do I believe that being gay is a choice? I can't answer that. I'm not a doctor, not a scientist.
Let me ask a different question then. Do you believe gay people, gay students have historically been discriminated against?
Not by me.
Sure. No. Not by you, of course.
We're talking about my bill.
Sure.
And as far as worldwide, has there been discrimination? I think every group has suffered discrimination, and some of us on this dais have suffered discrimination. But as far as disproportionately one group over another, I don't really know. I know you're leading me somewhere, and I'm not sure
I'm
where
not
we're
trying.
going.
Well, let me just be straight.
I think discrimination does exist, but I don't think it's just for one group.
So let me tell you why I'm asking these questions. Because if being gay is not a choice, and gay people and gay students have faced historical discrimination, that may be why we celebrate Pride for those students, right? Because if a group of students, whether it's gay kids, whether it's black kids, we want to make sure that we are creating time to uplift those students so that we're kind of counterbalancing the historical discrimination against those kids. For instance, why we have Black History Month, right? To ensure that a group of kids who have faced historical discrimination are included, and that we're specifically going out of our way to make sure that they are included. I think that's my concern about any effort or any legislation that would prevent school districts from celebrating groups of students that have faced historical discrimination.
Well, I think that is certainly your opinion, and you're welcome to it. But what I would also say is, not every kid has discriminated against anybody. Not every kid wants to celebrate somebody else's sexuality, and not every parent wants their kid subjected to these things. So comparing a sexually oriented celebration to Black History Month, it seems to me like apples and oranges here. But it's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to clarify, and just like we admitted on Valentine's Day is not about sex, right? Valentine's Day is about love. It's a celebration of love. It's a celebration of relationships of all kinds, right? And usually, at least when I remember growing up in public schools, was nothing sexual about it when we exchanged Valentine's Day cards, or our teachers exchanged Valentine's Day cards, or a teacher talked about their husband or their wife and Valentine's Day. I think the same is true of Pride. Pride is not about sex. Pride is about celebrating a group of students and their identity, their background, especially because they've faced historical discrimination. So I think that's why we're trying to drill down on what exactly we're talking about when we say a celebration of sexual preference. And you've told us it doesn't include Valentine's Day, shouldn't include prom, shouldn't include dances, shouldn't include proposals at school. But then we ask about pride, and it seems like the answer is a little less clear. I think that's my concern.
I appreciate your opinion. I think I've been very clear, and I did not specify Pride or any other group in the bill, nor will I. I'm going to continue to answer that question the exact same way every time you ask it, no matter how you ask it. Now, once again, the language of my bill is admittedly broad, and it's broad because the bill is not aimed at one group or another. That's why the bill is written that way. But once again, I'll extend the offer to you. If you have some language that you want to talk about, and I will be happy to work with you and take a look at whatever your opinions are.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Last question. This is about sex ed, because the bill bans providing special instruction regarding a sexual preference. Your intent is not to mess with sex ed.
It is not.
Okay.
A parent certainly has a right to take their kid out of that class.
Sure.
It is not a campus-wide class, so no, my bill does not.
Okay. Would you be open to us looking at language that would clarify, ensuring that sex ed is not caught up in your bill?
Certainly. I think you know this about me. I'm open to working with anybody on this dais, and that has a suggestion, and that one would not be precluded as far as I'm concerned if you have something to talk about.
Okay. I appreciate you'll be open to question, Chairman, and to looking at language. I'm very concerned about the current language in the bill, and I think some clarification would be helpful and needed, and I appreciate you being willing to work with us on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Dr. Allen?
Yes, thank you. On your bill, I see the line that says authorizing a fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Who pays the fine?
The teacher or the superintendent that sanctions an event that this bill would preclude. It's in the same manner, Dr. Allen, as when we passed the Inappropriate Student-Teacher Relationship Act. If a teacher is caught up in that, there is a sanction, there is a fine. That this would work the same way.
Okay, and how much is the fine?
Well, it could range. I think it says, doesn't it? I've got it somewhere.
500 to 10,000.
The actual number isn't in here that I'm finding, but it is substantial. I think it would depend on the circumstance, and
It's not in the bill?
it is in here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, yes, it goes. It can be not less than 500 and not more than 10,000.
10,000 for a teacher to pay. When we
If
pay,
they violate the law.
when we pay the teacher $38,000 a year, so we'll take $10,000 for a fine for.
If they violate the law, if this becomes law,
Okay.
that's really the question. And the thing of it is, if you pass a law and there's no sanction in it, then there was no point in passing the law. If I would just suggest a teacher or a superintendent not engage in these type of celebrations, then there is no fine.
Okay. It also says that the teachers could lose his or her license.
That is correct. And that is consistent with the Inappropriate Student-Teacher Relationship Act we passed in 17 and in 19 that does the same thing. I believe engaging in sexually oriented celebrations district-wide is an inappropriate relationship.
Okay,
So that's where that is consistent with what we did in the past on that subject.
Okay, so that's one more thing that teachers have to fear when they come into the profession, that if you make a mistake.
I don't think that's a mistake, Dr. Allen. That's a choice to celebrate something that is a clear violation of the law, should House Bill 1507 ever make it that far. That is a choice. That is not, oops, I messed up. I spilled my coffee. Now I owe $10,000. That is not a mistake, ma'am. That is a choice.
Okay, so that's one more thing. You add that to, you don't teach certain parts of Black history. You don't teach gay and lesbian movements. You don't teach, and that's one more thing that a teacher has to fear when they come into the profession.
I think that's also a choice if they're fearing that. I think teachers should teach school, should teach reading, writing, math, science. I don't think teachers should be teaching sexually oriented celebrations.
How big a problem is this for the state of Texas?
You know, I think everything starts with a few, and then it continues to go on and on. The problem, as I see it, Dr. Allen, is we have a real attack on our teaching profession and our public schools. And I think you and I both can agree on that. And I am a fierce defender of public schools and teachers, by the way, and always have been, and I'm not going to change this stance. But when things like this are going on in our public schools, and I believe teachers are underpaid and overworked, but then some teachers have time for this, I think it negates part of the argument. I think truly that's where the argument stems from, and I think all groups should support our public teachers. We should go back to teaching school and leave this stuff out of the classroom. That's what the bill's for.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Dutton.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I had several questions, Ken. Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. We're
Is it only school district sponsored activities that this would catch, or is it an individual teacher?
No, in my opinion, that's a good question. I think, and that's something to maybe Mr. Talrico's point that should be clarified. The intent of the bill was school district sanctioned.
Okay, so
So it would encompass all kids.
That's what I thought you would.
What my point is not that if a teacher
had an activity
themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Or and it was a small group of kids that want to participate in it, and their parents are okay with it. My bill is not trying to stop that. My bill is trying to stop an entire district forcing the entire student population to participate in something, whether they want to or not, because of a certain population wants to. And once again, that is a place that probably some tightening of the language should be addressed.
Because I think that's as a lawyer, one of the things when I looked at it, I said, is it school-sponsored activities, or is this related to an individual teacher activity? And I thought I understood what you said, that,
I appreciate
that it's
you
a
clarifying that.
state-sponsored, a
Yeah.
school-sponsored activity and a district-sponsored
The
activity.
district-wide
Sponsored.
activity is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were getting at. And then lastly, in listening at some of the conversation, I thought about this language that said, after the word preference on line 12, and I added, if it interferes with the daily instruction.
Okay?
Okay, that's what you're trying to get at.
That's right.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Hinojosa.
So follow up on that questioning. So then optional after-school LGBT, gay, straight alliance clubs, those are not targeted by your bill or not encompassing in your bill?
I think, as you've pointed out, the broad language of this bill, if the bill passed in its current form, those things would be caught up in it. That is not the intent of the bill, and that's
Okay.
where I'm saying to all of you that if there's some tightening of the language that gets back to what Chairman Dutton was just talking about, that's the intent of the bill.
Okay, appreciate that.
All right. Members, any more questions of Chairman King? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed to testimony. Okay. Chair calls Stephen Rudner. testifying on behalf of himself. Thank you for being here today. The sheriff we show you registered as Stephen Rudner on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. You may proceed.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm here to speak in strong opposition to the bill, which first would make it illegal for a school to host a program dedicated to providing special instruction regarding a sexual preference. None of those terms are defined. So when a student is killed or bullied to death because they're a member of the LGBTQ community and the school decides to exercise basic human compassion and hold an anti-bullying program focused on gay or trans kids, is that special instruction regarding a sexual preference? Can anyone seriously believe that we should ban anti-bullying programs? Along the same lines, the bill would prohibit schools from hosting a program celebrating a sexual preference. If it were to pass, you'd be making it illegal for the marriage of any faculty member or the birth of their child to be celebrated at a program hosted by a school. Are we going to ban homecoming celebrations at which schools elect a homecoming king and queen, perhaps the most clear celebration of being straight, which according to this bill is a sexual preference? Are we going to ban education about HIV and AIDS because programs on those subjects provide instruction regarding a sexual preference? Are we going to ban schools from plays, putting on plays, or teaching Romeo and Juliet, which at its core is about sexual orientation? The bill prevents schools from organizing or hosting pride programs. Of course, it does not, and because of the First Amendment, cannot prevent students from free expression. Our high school students are smart enough to organize on their own days where everyone wears rainbow-colored clothing to demonstrate solidarity with their LGBTQ peers. The bill would cause our students to humiliate their own teachers because the students would be standing up for what's right, while the teachers are required to stay silent. I'd like to talk about the harm the bill would do to LGBT kids, but also to straight kids. Pride celebrations are not recruiting events. There is no amount of balloons or rainbow flags or cake that can turn a straight student gay. Pride celebrations are important in schools so that marginalized students can stand up to the constant bullying they confront and realize there's much to be celebrated because they exist. Pride celebrations honor and add dignity to life. The bill would make it illegal for schools to host those celebrations. Shortly after my son came out in 8th grade, he had the honor of marching with the Human Rights Campaign in the Dallas Pride Parade. As he walked by the cheering crowds, I could literally see his dignity being elevated. Every kid deserves to be seen and validated and celebrated. The children whose dignity this bill would strip away are, whether you accept it or not, your grandchildren, your future great-grandchildren. But, Mr. Chairman, I fear the biggest harm caused by this bill would be to straight students in our public schools. In this session of the legislature, we're being asked to ban books that mention gay people, prevent mention of sexual orientation in the schools, prevent pride celebrations. How fragile do we think our students are? And that they don't know that we live in a world in which LGBTQ people exist. That each of us, whether we know it or not, has a family member who is LGBT. Our students watch TV, they're on the internet, they live in the real world. To try to shield them from the world in which we live is insulting to them, contributes to the sense that they're being raised in a backwards, biased, and bigoted state, and it teaches them that the adults they deal with are living in a fantasy world disconnected with reality.
Okay. Members, any questions for this witness? Representative Talarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing up the point about anti-bullying programs. Are you aware that anti-bullying is actually a part of our required curriculum in the state of Texas?
It is, but apparently with this bill, we could talk about anti-bullying, but not anti-bullying based on someone's sexual orientation.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Members, any more questions for the witness? All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Elijah Amini, testifying on behalf of himself. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Elijah Amini. Amini. And you'll be testifying on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you may proceed.
My name is Elijah Amini. I'm a 19-year-old transgender male here representing myself in opposition of House Bill 1507. According to a 2022 national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health conducted by the Trevor Project, LGBTQ youth who found their school to be LGBTQ affirming reported lower rates of attempting suicide. Here's what I know. Time and again, my friends are bullied, harassed, and generally discriminated against on account of their LGBTQ+ identity. So in my sophomore year of high school, I started what would become the school's GSA, Genders and Sexualities Alliance, in order to provide a safe space for struggling adolescents, a place where they could be themselves. My goal for that club was being a family for kids who couldn't count on their own. It was being the place for a teen whose best friend had just committed suicide to be able to cry and grieve without judgment. It was the place where a person who had to live their life pretending to be someone they aren't could express their true self and receive unconditional acceptance. For some, that club was the only thing that got them through school. Being a teenager and going through high school is hard enough already when you don't have your own government working against you and your well-being under the guise of doing what's best for children. I could quote more statistics, but those don't seem to mean anything anymore unless they confirm a bias. So I'll tell you this instead. Between my freshman and senior year, I was hospitalized 7 times for either having attempted suicide or been at risk of attempting, and nearly every time, LGBTQ plus adolescents constituted a majority of the patients within the behavioral health facility. There are undeniable negative impacts of having your identity denied and of dealing with discrimination, stigmas, and negative stereotypes, all of which are perpetuated by anti-LGBTQ plus bills like HB 1507. So I'm here today imploring you to vote against House Bill 1507 and therefore give us the chance to be understood, to be treated as equals, and to have the right to access a safe space in school when, for many of us, we can't find it anywhere else. Thank you so much for your time.
Members, any questions for this witness? Representative Hinojosa?
I want to thank you for what you've done, for your courage, for helping other students who are struggling, and for providing a safe space for them, and for being here today. I know it's hard, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate it, and so many people appreciate your bravery for stepping up and pushing back against a harmful bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Members, any additional questions of Representative Tallarico?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, just wanted to make sure you know how proud we are that you're here and have the bravery to come up here, because it's very intimidating for anybody to come speak in front of a bunch of people in suits, and you did a great job. I also wanted to ask you, and you may not know the answer to this, but are you aware that suicide prevention is a required part of our curriculum here in Texas?
Yes, I am, and I've experienced the suicide prevention, curriculum. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members, any additional questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here. Chair calls Dr. Maria Rivera, KIPP Texas Public Schools, and herself. We show you registered as Maria Rivera.
Yes, sir.
On behalf of the KIPP Texas Public Schools and yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Morning.
I'm Dr. Maria Rivera, and I proudly serve as the Managing Director of Student Wellness and Medical Director of KIPP Texas. KIPP Texas Public Schools is an open enrollment, public tuition-free charter school network of 59 schools in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston, with 32,000 pre-K through 12th grade students across the state. I am a pediatrician and a public health physician. I have been taking care of kids for more than 10 years, and at KIPP Texas, I ensure that our students are physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy so that they're able to learn. I am also a member of a DSHS advisory committee, though I am not speaking in that capacity today. At KIPP Texas, we talk a lot about what we call brave and belonging spaces. That means that we want our KIPPsters to walk into every classroom exactly as they are. We also purposefully create inclusive classrooms. This includes not only our students, but our teachers and staff as well. This is not because of any political ideology. Rather, it is because it is scientifically and pedagogically better for student outcomes. We have data that shows that at KIPP Texas, if students feel like they belong, their attendance is better, they're suspended less, and our student retention is better. Our job, our contract with the state of Texas, is to grow the knowledge of our KIPPsters so that they can go on to be productive citizens with choice-filled lives. I want to share a little bit with you about some significant concerns we have with House Bill 1507. First, let me tell you about Sarah, an ally to our LGBTQ community who is one of the 100 student members of the Gay Straight Student Alliance at KIPP Aspire Academy. Through the Alliance, she not only has learned LGBTQ history, but she has helped the entire campus become a more inclusive and friendly place. My first concern with HB 1507 is this what would constitute special instruction regarding sexual preference? Given the strict penalties outlined in this bill for educators, we are troubled that the language is far too vague. Would we have to terminate student-built alliances like this one, which are entirely voluntary and that we know provides a benefit to participating students? Second, we are concerned about how this approach cuts out our local school health advisory council when it comes to instruction or programming related to sexual orientation and gender identity. Our SHAC is active, thoughtful, and the majority of the membership is parents of our community. All sexual health curricula must go through the SHAC and be approved before they are used in any of our schools. This bill proposes to single out this one topic and override decisions made by local bodies that were established to do this exact work. And lastly, the enforcement mechanism is very unclear. Would the many charter schools and ISDs that celebrate Pride Month immediately be in violation? As someone who is on the ground right now in education, I worry about the intimidating effect this will have on our teachers. Thank you.
Members, any questions for Dr. Rivera? All right, thank you for being here. Chair calls Maggie Stern, Program and Policy Manager, Children's Defense Fund, Texas, and self. We show you registered as Maggie Stern on behalf of Children's Defense Fund and yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Maggie Stern. I'm here representing the Children's Defense Fund of Texas, a nonpartisan children's advocacy organization that works to ensure every child has the resources and opportunities they need to thrive with the support of caring communities. We urge you to be part of building that caring community and oppose HB 1507. Young people deserve schools where they are safe, supported, and encouraged to be their full selves. This bill uses the antiquated language of sexual preference, but let's step away from that language for a second and just talk about what this bill could be banning. Is it rainbow flags in the classroom? Is it a book display with books like Best Colors, a book about a young boy with two moms who learns he can have more than one favorite color? Is it a promposal in the hall? Is it asking kids what their families look like? Two moms, a single parent, a mom and dad, a grandparent. And if so, what is so objectionable about children learning a little more about the world around them and celebrating pride in who we are and in the people we love? The truth is that there is nothing inherently sexual about pride celebrations or LGBTQ+ identity. Let me repeat that. There is nothing inherently sexual about LGBTQ+ identity. Just as when a boy and a girl have play weddings and hold hands on the playground, it doesn't mean sexualizing straightness. It just means that children are learning about families and relationships and love. Children understand love. We all want to raise children who are empathetic, kind, and curious about the world around them. The young people you're hearing from today, brave enough to stand in front of you, asking you to oppose this bill, are the best representatives of the rising generation of Texans, the vast majority of whom support LGBTQ+ rights. Let me tell you, I work with young people all the time. The first question I always ask them is what issues they want their adult elected officials to be focusing on and taking care of. They talk about mental health. They talk about bullying. Not a single one of them has ever said too much support for LGBTQ+ students and peers. Let's demonstrate in this body what we want for all of our students, and let's listen to the students who are here today telling us what they need. Please oppose HB 1507. Thank you.
Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thank you for being here. Chair calls Megan Bahoon, testifying on behalf of yourself. Megan, I may be getting the last name incorrect. Megan Bahoon, B-I-H-U-N. Okay, we'll show Megan Bahoon testifying on behalf of herself, registered against. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. We show you registered as Megan Bahoon on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Megan Bahoon, and I'm here to speak against House Bill 1507 as a Texan parent and a queer community member. We as Texans offer so many opportunities for our students to be proud. We encourage them to celebrate pride as Texans. We allow and host clubs and groups for students who are Christian athletes and future farmers. My own Texas public school students have celebrated Lunar New Year future careers, and dress-up days dedicated to many other parts of their identity and the identity of others. There is no reason that those same students should be required to hide their pride as Texans in who they are. Others have spoken on the broad language here and other harms that all Texas students that this bill would cause. As a student, I longed for celebrations of who I was, as others were celebrated every day. A place to be seen in my own Texas public school, to be known for who I was. Unfortunately, I went to school before unconstitutional code was addressed, meaning that I didn't have that opportunity. Do not create more barriers to students having their rights upheld and their identities affirmed. Please do not allow this bill to pass out of committee and harm our Texas public schools and students.
Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Sarah Freund, testifying on behalf of herself. I got that right? Freund.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
We show you registered as Sarah Freund on behalf of yourself and be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I'm here today to voice my opposition to House Bill 1507. Excuse me, on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of educators, parents, and students across the state of Texas. I'm grateful to work with amazing students in Austin, and I want to read a statement one of them shared when asked what Pride Week means to them. This student said, "Pride Week is a time when we can celebrate the identities that so frequently get thrown to the curb. It's 7 out of 365 days of the year when we can say, this is me and that's okay. I think it's things like these that make us feel a little bit safer, especially with all the recent difficulties, and in parentheses they said understatement of the year, that is thrown at trans youth. It feels good being surrounded by support and love as a gay kid. This student recognizes that heteronormativity is affirmed every day in countless ways, and many of the people who have testified, and some of you on this dais have also talked about the different ways that heterosexual relationships are affirmed daily in our schools. This is not only in celebrations, but it's in books, it's on things, posters on the wall, it's in words that we use, it's pictures of teachers and their families hanging outside of their classroom. It's in so many ways that as someone who is heterosexual, it took me a long time to understand that the lens that I view the world through is not necessarily the ones that others do. And so I'm grateful for students, for community members who have helped me to grow in that way so that I can see another way of being and see some of the things that they see and experience. This student just wants to be, to feel seen, heard, and valued for being themselves just 1 week out of the year. They want to embrace who they are and not feel like they have to hide. They want to feel safe in their school. They want to feel supported and loved. I hope you heard all of those things in their comment. Pride Week is for our LGBTQIA+ youth, but it's also for all of our students. I heard talk about, this is just about those who identify in the LGBTQ community, but it's not, it's for everyone. We want our students, all of them, to be well-rounded citizens, and part of that is understanding the diverse world in which we live. Research shows us that when students aren't able to comprehend the lived experiences of others, it can cause tension, bullying, and other forms of physical and psychological marginalization, harming the learning environment, and that's what we're here to do. We want to create an environment in which our students can learn, and they can't if they're feeling that, if they're feeling like who they are doesn't have a place in our schools. Sometimes we see this in absenteeism. Okay. Dropping out of school, adverse health conditions, consequences, and academic underachievement. I want to remind you that 86% of our LGBTQIA youth report that they have been targets of bullying and harassment outside of school. All of our students, all of them benefit from identity-affirming practices in our schools, and for some of them, their lives depend on it. So please vote no on House Bill 1507 and let our students feel seen, heard, and valued for being exactly who they are.
All right. Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Donald Garner, Executive Director, Texas Faith and Freedom Coalition. Also, the overflow room is E2028. E2028. Yeah. Donald Garner. Okay. All right. All right. We will show Donald Garner, the Executive Director for Texas Faith and Freedom Coalition, registered for the bill. And now we'll move on to Ryan Davenport, testifying on behalf of himself. Okay. All right, we show you registered as Ryan Davenport. On behalf of yourself, you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Members of the committee, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story openly for the first time. My name's Ryan Davenport, and I'm a public school assistant principal in Dallas ISD, here in my capacity as an individual, not to represent anybody other than myself. Before beginning my 10-year career in education, I spent the 83rd legislative session working for then Chairman Dan Patrick on the Senate Education Committee. Before that, I worked for the Republican Party of Texas, getting many of your colleagues elected. And in 2012 and 2016, I was a duly elected member of the delegations to the Republican National Conventions. I'm here to speak against this bill for very specific reasons. Some I've learned in my personal life, and I regret that the bill author is not here to hear this, but some I've learned in my personal life, while others I've learned while working in schools. I should be on my campus right now serving my students, but instead I've got to be here for this bill that I find more dangerous than you might think. I think bills like this are easy to write if you don't know any gay people. I've learned in my experience that when the issue is personal and not so far removed, you can see the nuance in the situation. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to share some of my story. I knew I was gay when I was in middle school. Long before that, I knew I was different, but I didn't have the words to explain what it was. I would go on to spend the next 18 years of my life in the closet. Over the course of my 20s, I voluntarily enrolled myself in a 12-step program at my local church. Thinking that I could fix my homosexuality. Every time I would complete my inventory, in step 6, I'd become discouraged and give up, and there were days when I would have rather been dead than been out of the closet. So many kids, likely ones that you know and love, could feel the exact same way if they feel alone in the world and trapped in the closet. At 30, I realized that the 12-step recovery didn't work because being gay wasn't a problem. God created me exactly the way he wanted me, and I learned how to love myself for who I was created to be. I came out to my friends and family. I'm thankful to have their support. This bill continues to threaten teachers, some of the most important employees in our state, with the loss of their license if they support, celebrate, or promote Pride Week, Pride Month, or True Love Waits for that matter. My conservative uncle said it best on Sunday over the phone. He said, "Why are these guys wasting their time on this when they don't even have enough teachers as it is?" What would we do if an entire district defied this order? Would we suspend 1,000 teaching licenses at once and leave a community without educators? We're already staring down a growing teacher shortage, the effects of which will be felt for decades. Did the bill author consider those unintended consequences? All things considered, I can tell you this, and I'm not being dramatic, using it as a hammer over your head today, but if this bill becomes law, I can draw a straight line between its enforcement and whether gay kids live or die. If the schoolhouse can't be a place where we celebrate who kids are and teach them how to appreciate differences, then we're failing as a state and risking their lives unnecessarily. If you don't know any gay people, I'd be happy to sit down at the dinner table with you and share some of my experiences and the experience of my students over the years and provide some context for what it means to be a gay Christian Republican. Through those conversations, we grow.
Wrap up your testimony, please.
And growth is nothing to fear. Thank you.
All right. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, Representative Talarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. And so this is the first time you're sharing your story.
Yes, sir.
So just wanted to thank you for that. And we want everyone to share their story, and regardless of what side they fall on. So I appreciate you doing that. You know, I know why, as a Democrat or a progressive, why I oppose the bill, but curious, since you're a Republican, why you oppose the bill.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember the days of the Republican Party when we believed in liberty and freedom and allowing people to be who they are with as little government interference as possible. I'm also old enough to remember whenever I used to work on the campaign that we were about small and limited government. But if I stacked up the bills you guys pass every single year that make my job harder as an administrator and as a teacher, that doesn't really square with what I know it to be as a Republican.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Members, any more questions? All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Megan Buchanan. Testifying on behalf of herself. We show you registered as Megan Buchanan on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. King said that he's not a scientist or a doctor, but he is a publicly elected official with a staff of researchers who can provide him with a full lit review of data that shows LGBTQIA+ students and staff experience marginalization and discrimination much more frequently than those who identify as cisgendered or heterosexual. A first grade student knows to back up their writing with evidence from the literature, and I think our elected officials should be held to that same expectation. In Austin ISD, we expect our teachers and campus leaders to leverage data to inform their teaching practice and decision-making on campus. At the district level, we also strive to ground our decision-making and policies in that research and data. We use data to improve our campus climate and to empower teachers and students to use many forms of data as they personalize the teaching and learning that happens in their classrooms. If we look at this bill through a data-informed lens, we find it's missing a problem statement. What is being solved here? If we also focus on redundancy, there are several places where some of these concerns are already addressed that was mentioned earlier too. Section 37 about sexual harassment, subchapter G, suicide prevention, and even our code that addresses district and campus level planning and decision-making talks about suicide prevention as a requirement. Our data tells us that including Pride celebrations and LGBTQ representation in our curriculum has a positive impact on the experiences and outcomes of all of our students. And here's some further data. LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times likely to commit suicide or attempt suicide. Research suggests that among these youth, only 1/3 experience parental acceptance. Those who report levels of parental rejection are 8 times more likely to report attempting suicide and 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression. Ryan et al., 2009. Many LGBTQ youth lack access to affirming spaces, with only 55% of LGBTQ youth reporting that their school is affirming. LGBTQ young people report lower rates of attempting suicide when they have access to affirming spaces. 73% of youth that identify as LGBTQ report that they have experienced discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Having at least one accepting adult can reduce this risk of suicide attempting among these students by 40%. LGBTQ youth who live in a community that is accepting report much lower rates of attempted suicide than those who do not. One of the leading preventers of suicide is affirming spaces and activities at school. The Trevor Project's research has found that LGBTQ youth who found their school and home to be affirming reported lower rates of attempting suicide. LGBT youth who report the presence of trusted adults at their schools have higher levels of self-esteem, and access to supportive peers is protected against anxiety and depression, including those who lack support from their family. There's lots more data. I think this bill doesn't stand.
All right. Thank you. Members, any questions? Our Representative Hinojosa.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. You come very well prepared with data like a good educator, and I appreciate that. But I'd also like to know, you've been in schools, and do you have any stories of a way that creating a safe, inclusive environment in your school has affected a child?
Yes, definitely. I think most of my preparation for education involved, learning techniques for teaching content, but we always started with a relationship, and in order to be able to connect with a student around topics that are in our curriculum, we had to be able to build relationships and have authentic conversations. And that doesn't mean sharing my sex life. It means talking about who I am and being able to show up authentically in my classroom. And when I began teaching, I was advised not to do that, not to share my own family story, that I was married to a woman. And as a result, I just felt like I could not build those relationships with my students, and it impacted my ability to teach them and also my own well-being. And when I moved into Austin ISD and I was able to be more open and feel like that was a safe decision for my family and for myself, it drastically improved my own experience and my well-being, and also my ability to build those relationships and have success with my students and their achievement. And I've seen that they were able to see that there were teachers and there were people in their community who were also identifying as gay or LGBTQ, whatever the identity was, And I think that improved their ability to set goals and have a vision for their own success. So,
Thank you for what you do for our kids.
All right, members, any more questions? All right, thank you for being here.
thank you.
Chair calls Paul Kretschmer, testify on behalf of himself. We have a couple seconds here from maybe the overflow room. Paul Kretschmer.
Apologies.
That's okay. All right, we show you registered as Paul Kretschmer on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
I'm here today as a private individual, though I do work in public education, and my pronouns are he, him, queers. If there had been pride events when I attended public school many decades ago, the impact on my self-esteem and worldview would have been profound. If the intent of this bill were to destigmatize such slurs as fag and queer and gay, instead of silencing conversation about LGBTQ plus issues, I wouldn't have to be here today. The ability to move in the world as my authentic self is something that has taken me decades to learn. Pride celebrations in elementary schools are essential for promoting inclusivity and creating a safe and welcoming environment for all students. These celebrations provide an opportunity for students to learn about diversity and acceptance while celebrating differences. In addition to creating an inclusive environment, Pride celebrations also help to combat bullying and harassment. By promoting acceptance and understanding, students are less likely to engage in harmful behaviors towards their peers who identify as LGBTQ+. Furthermore, Pride celebrations help students who identify as LGBTQ+ to feel validated and supported. For many students, school is a challenging environment, and having a supportive community can make all the difference in their mental health and well-being. Finally, Pride celebrations can and are a powerful teaching tool for educators. By incorporating lessons on LGBTQ+ history and rights, educators can help to create a more informed and empathic student who are better equipped to navigate a diverse and complex world. Pride celebrations in elementary schools are crucial for promoting inclusivity, combating bullying, supporting LGBTQ+ students, and creating more informed and empathic students. By celebrating diversity and promoting acceptance, we can create a more just and equitable society for all.
All right. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thanks for being here. Chair calls Hayden Cohen. Okay. Good morning. We show you registered as Hayden Cohen on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Hayden Cohen, and I'm a native Houstonian and a recent high school graduate. For most of my time in high school, I was the GSA, the Gender Sexuality Alliance president, meaning that while you guys were trying to pass harmful bills back in 2021, I was there trying to reassure students, help them find joy in their identities, and celebrate being part of this vibrant community. I urge you to oppose this bill. Some of you may know what this object is I hold, but for those who don't, it's a dreidel, a toy that Jewish people like myself play with every Hanukkah. This toy represents a time when Jewish people were forced by the Greeks to stop practicing and studying Judaism. The Jewish people would secretly learn from religious texts and practice for their culture, but when the Greeks came looking around their homes, the Jews would take out their dreidels and pretend to play with them while hiding their Jewish texts. I'm reminded of this story when looking at this bill that was filed. I'll tell you, prohibiting us to learn and celebrate our LGBTQ+ culture and identities in school will not stop us. Just like the Jews, we will continue to educate each other and celebrate our identities and our culture. Nothing you pass will erase us and suppress us, but just know by passing this, you're no better than those Greeks. You are no better than them. Please oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Amber Watts. We show you registered as Amber Watts on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Amber Watts. I appreciate this time to speak to you. I am testifying against HB 1507 as a community member, a parent of 2 elementary school children, and the education director at Austin Justice Coalition. This bill bans many activities, whether intentional or not, And those activities are ones that, such as Pride, that promote inclusive, affirming environment. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. Inclusive, affirming environments in schools. These particular environments increase students' sense of safety and belonging. They set up a foundation of understanding, respect, and acceptance. Increasing student well-being and promoting a positive school environment actually leads to lowering students' rates of attempted suicide and also the rates of bullying. We encourage the committee to consider how this bill can potentially affect our youth negatively by creating an unsafe and exclusive school environment. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thanks for being here. Chair calls Cameron Samuels. We show you registered as Cameron Samuels on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
My name is Cameron. I am 19 and use they, them pronouns. I graduated K through 12 school in Katy and was a member of my school's Pride Club until it was disbanded. In my experience, I know representation is vital to queer youth. When our education curriculum reflects our identities, when our schools affirm our identities, when our legislature acknowledges our mere existence, Texas youth thrive. Denying the rights and existence of queer and transgender individuals will ultimately harm Texas youth. We should be celebrating each other and proceeding with constructive legislation that brings our communities up rather than tears us apart. We could support student mental health by increasing suicide prevention training for teachers. We could support legislation ending child marriage and improving child literacy, but we're not. We're wasting our time, this legislature, by harming our fellow Texans. There's only so much time in this session, and there are so many needs of Texans yet to be met by the legislature. But we're here questioning the dignity of our fellow Texans. When will the fear-mongering end and the legislation begin?
Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? Okay, thank you for being here. Chair calls Gregory Porter. Okay. We show you registered as Gregory Porter on behalf of Texas for Liberty and Texas Liberty Council and yourself.
Correct.
And you'll be testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, with a friendly suggestion. I want to start, first of all, by saying that I'm a very liberal thinker, and I think as I'm listening to this conversation and have been all week, that unconditional love is a non-negotiable. I believe that people should be able to express themselves in any way that they need to, and I'm, increasingly concerned just as a compassionate father about the nature of the growing levels of confusion that we see around this issue. But I would really like to distinguish the difference between celebrating and allowing space for people to express themselves and finding out what is age appropriate and what is not. Because I have kids that are kindergartners, and I have a friend who goes to the elementary school that I go to, and a counselor came in because they didn't opt out of the sex education program, and the counselor point blank asked a 30-year-old boy if he wanted to be a boy or a girl. And the problem that I have is not about creating a space for people to express themselves. We absolutely should be, there should be no question about that. There should not be any language in this bill that prevents people from having a pride club or being able to organize and express this. But that's very different than creating a celebration where this conversation is forced onto people, because what I'm seeing is a lot of very insecure children that are being given information that's making them confused when they might not otherwise be confused about what I believe is something that I can have a conversation with my kids about. I'm going to teach my kids to unconditionally love people regardless of their expression. That is what we teach in our home, and they will accept other people. My daughter, picks up books, books from the library and things that are really, she doesn't see the world in that way of distinction. But I really want to distinguish the concept of us, allowing self-expression without creating institutionalized education that's happening that I believe in some context that's not age appropriate. It'd be one thing if we were allowing a school mandatory pride celebration in a high school level, right? I don't see any issue with that, and I think it's totally acceptable. There's nothing wrong with allowing these, these clubs to exist. There should be no issue with that. That's complete liberty. But that's very different than institutionalizing a conversation that some people don't agree is age appropriate. And that's what I think we need to distinguish. So to the extent that this bill can delineate that is important, because what we're not doing here is trying to squash people's opinion or their expression. We need to fully embrace that, and we need to love unconditionally and teach our children that. But that's very different than institutionalizing content that I candidly believe what they're teaching in these sexuality classes is very incomplete and inappropriate for certain ages. And so that's why I think we need to distinguish this, and I just hope that everybody that stood up to share here, I think, can really distinguish the concept of us as a community embracing and loving everyone from attempting to institutionalize something that very well might be harmful to other children who are not confused about these issues. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? Representative Hinojosa.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So sorry.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. And I'm not sure I fully caught the context of the situation you cited. Can you repeat again what it was that you heard or were told that you believe was not appropriate?
Well, I mean, I have the kindergartners that are in the sex education program, so I'm aware of some of the things that they're teaching with this. I just want to ask one question real quick that's I think is very interesting, is in a country where education is the responsibility of the states, how is it possible that in 12 months we've nationally instituted a sex education program across all schools? So this sex education program from K through 12 is being taught in the schools. And what happened at Cassis Elementary, and by the way, in AISD, this program was permitted with no parent involvement. They had a meeting that was like an emergency meeting, and no discussion, no public discussion was happening about adopting sex education curriculum. I have a problem with that. But the thing that happened in the school was my friend has a 3rd grade boy. They co-parent, and the father did not opt out of the sex ed, which the school's been very good about providing that opportunity, and was asked point blank by a counselor who came in to teach this whether he wanted to be a boy or a girl. And the problem is that there's a lot of people that have really healthy sensitivity and appropriateness about how they handle these conversations, and there's a lot of people that are really confused about it. And I don't want those people having conversations with my children. It's a conversation that we can have as a family, and that is going to be unnegotiated, unconditional love. That's what everybody in this room ought to be focused on. That's what education ought to be focused on, in my humble opinion.
And I appreciate that perspective. You know, I think part of the challenge is that teachers come from communities and bring with them the values of their community, their upbringing, their experience. They're human beings.
Of course.
And this bill doesn't address teaching of human sexuality, and I'm frankly not familiar with what is taught at 3rd grade. I know that there are restrictions that have been put on that curriculum by the state. I know there's parental rights component that is implicated and given, rightfully so, but so my fear is that you may have an individual with this bill. This is a more broad, it's not, and I think we heard the author say it doesn't speak to sex education.
Well, just real quick, they are teaching curriculum throughout Pride Week in elementary, and I had to ask the school what that was. So there is structured curriculum that comes along with this. It's not just a parade. They're teaching specific concepts that are outside of the sex education program during that week.
My understanding of the concepts that they're teaching are concepts of acceptance and inclusivity of all walks of people.
On the outside, that is the concept, but the specific conversations that are happening offer a level of confusion for children who's not questioning those things to begin with.
Well, my concern is that because our teachers are human beings who come with their own preconceived notions of the way the world should be, their own values, their own upbringing, their own experiences, that creating a bill that takes away their certification because they mess up and express an idea or belief that they have is going to not only turn away people from the profession, but is going to hinder their ability to freely teach their kids. And so I'm not disputing the example you brought up, and I understand that concern. But what my fear is, and what with this bill, is that we're going so broad, and we may not be able to catch all those opportunities of expression that a teacher demonstrates in a classroom that a parent doesn't agree with. And so, everybody's trying to do the best they can.
Of course. And
I don't want to
acting-
institutionalize fear in the classroom.
Sure. Well, I would say, too, that, for example, I mean, and this is a completely separate topic, but in our schools, and I totally welcome this in general, just because I want my kids to be open-minded, but they are teaching about different religious ceremonies, but they're not talking about Christianity. And if that was happening in the context of Christianity, there'd be a lot of people that would think that needs to be separated. And again, it's more just about the age appropriateness. If the bill is too broad and captures outside of what I'm talking about, I just don't think there should not be a situation where parents who are going to an elementary school or a middle school at the very least, to be able to not have their child subjected to something where they can't control that content, and they don't have the way to dismiss them from that conversation, because they might choose to have that conversation in a different way. And so again, and it's not, these things are always challenging, because everybody here is operating from love. Everybody here that's spoken is operating and coming from that place. But the problem is, if you've talked to a teenager lately, if you've talked to a 6-year-old, you realize how incredibly vulnerable those kids are. And when you start introducing certain concepts of you can be, whatever you want, anytime that you want, especially around these issues, and it's not sexual, but identity and sexuality is a very, very sensitive thing. Ministers and counselors have to be very, very careful, because people that are able to be truthful confuse sexuality even in that conversation. Sexuality, and it's not as an expression of sexuality. So this has nothing to do with respecting other people's expression of identity. But when you introduce these concepts to children that are not ready to have those conversations, or maybe they confuse that information, I'm concerned about all the insecure kids who would not be confused about that all of a sudden are beginning to question something that they wouldn't even be considering. So as it relates specifically to the bill, my friendly recommendation, would you be eliminate the language that says anything about students being able to organize or have pride clubs as an opt-in or a voluntary thing, even having a pride parade where the kids could decide if they wanted to participate in that. There's nothing wrong. We're not trying to squash expression, but we're not going to be in a situation where we're not forcing ideas onto other people. And it's more about the fact that, unfortunately, there are teachers that are confused about the nature of some of this content. And I believe that some of that they're not fully telling a complete picture. And I'll save that for a different testimony. But again, this is more about making sure that we have an environment where people are completely capable of expressing themselves, where they're able to organize in the ways that they want. But mandating and pushing something like that before the age is appropriate, that's really all I'm having a concern about. And again, I will teach my kids, and what they will hear from my mouth and what we will hear in our family is to love people regardless. And if we have a conversation where they are exposed to something, I'll have an honest conversation with them about that. But that's a conversation that I'm going to have as a father, and I'm not looking to a teacher to have that conversation. So the last thing I would say to answer your question is there's a lot of areas where teachers can't go. I think we need to really beef up our counseling for this. If there's really this issue with suicide, we really need to offer services, because I'm a deeply compassionate father who sees a real significant issue in our communities with this happening more and more and more. And I think that there's other things that are driving it, but I am compassionate for that, and I think we need to have abundant resources for that. And teachers need to be able to say to their children, if there's any kind of bullying or anything, teachers need to be able to coach their children openly like they would with any subject and say, we're going to teach we're going to treat everybody and love everybody unconditionally in this concept. So I'm not looking to circumvent that to the extent that the bill would prevent that. I think that's dangerous. So we need to allow the teachers to be able to address these things. We need to allow for counselors and people to be able to provide support. We need to allow students and anybody to be able to express themselves. That's very different than having a context where kids are going to be exposed no matter what at certain ages, which a lot of parents don't agree with. And that's, I'll leave it there. And I'm grateful for everybody who's stand up to share about this, because it's really, and the other thing I want to say is the LGBT community is an example of what it means to show up here and organize. You see 200 people here yesterday. If we could get 200 people to show up about data privacy and our constitutional rights, imagine how powerful this building would be. So we have a lot to learn from the LGBT community to organize and stand up for what they believe is true. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that they have a voice. Thank you.
Representative Tallarico.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for being here, and thank you for being nuanced in your testimony. I think it's really helpful. And I also know that Chairman King is one of the most thoughtful legislators here, and I know he's considering nuance. So I think this is a good conversation to have.
Sure.
One, I just want to clarify, I do think the LGBTQ community out there is here for constitutional rights, for their constitutional rights.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, if other people would show up in the way that they're coming together as a community, it's amazing to watch.
So I just want to clarify, because you were very clear that, you know, your concern is a very particular concern about discussions about sexuality in the lower grades. And you also clarified that in the upper grades, you don't want to do anything that's going to prevent self-expression or inclusivity.
At no age do I want to suppress anybody's expression of identity or who they are.
But you understand our concerns about the current format of the bill being very broad. You're talking about a very particular targeted concern, which I think is something that can be talked about. But this discussion, this bill in its current format, is kind of very broad and going to actually lead to some of the negative consequences that you're against. Is that your understanding of the bill?
My friendly suggestion would be to consider the conversation that we've had today and tailor this bill in such a way that addresses some of my concerns.
Because you said because my understanding of the TEKS and standards and curriculum in Texas is that a student in third grade, and certainly not a student in kindergarten, should be receiving sex education.
Oh, it's K through 12. I mean, AISD has permitted it. I mean, what happens now is the way that our government is working, unfortunately, is you have private money funding these nonprofit agencies that put together a sex education curriculum, and then they're using money to distribute this out and get it into local schools. And the AISD has a K through 12 sex education program that looks like 80% of the rest of the schools in this country. And it's just, again, as a dad, it has nothing to do with discrimination or free expression.
And you're, I think if I understand your testimony correct, you're okay in those grades talking about, there are different people and we don't want to discriminate. You're okay with that. Your concern is sex education or sexuality being discussed in the lower grades. Is that your concern?
And having these, I mean, again, a father who I didn't realize until I, wasn't paying attention to the announcements, it's on Monday, that there's Pride Week, and okay, well, what does that come along with? So when I talked to the school, I realized there's these curriculum assignments that come along with it, which were separate and apart from the sex education. And so I just think that certain things are not age appropriate, and what we need not to do is be mandating an environment that's having some of these conversations, which some parents don't agree is at the right time, or maybe they don't agree with how that conversation is happening.
Yeah, I think
and you're trying to nail it down to the bill, which makes sense. That's what you're here to do, is to legislate.
Yes, and that's, I'm given a bill that does a whole lot of stuff. You have a particular concern. Since you're a supporter of the bill, I would urge you to work with Chairman King's office. I
will.
And target what you're talking about, because that's a frustrating part of this process, is if we're all talking past each other.
Yes.
And bills can have unintended consequences if they're too broad. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you for being nuanced in your testimony.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the recommendation. And if it's Representative King, what I'll do is I'll put together an email, get with their office, and just share some of these things, and maybe make something that's a little bit more concrete for you guys to think about. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
H. Duggan Clay. Last call for Paige Duggan Clay. I show Paige Duggan Clay, Chief Legal Analyst for IDRA, Intercultural Development Research Association, against the bill. Okay, the chair calls Celeste Brown. Celeste Brown. Last call for Celeste Brown. I show Celeste Brown as, okay, come forward. Celeste, I show you Director of Advocacy and Communications, Compass Rose Public Schools, and yourself as a Director, Advocacy and Communications. I show you against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You may carry on.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Celeste Brown, and I serve as the Director of Advocacy and Communications for Compass Rose Public Schools, a pre-K through 12 school network with campuses in San Antonio, Manor, and Bastrop, here to testify against HB 1507. At Compass Rose, we pride ourselves on being truly inclusive and having classrooms where students feel safe, seen, and heard. When we acknowledge and celebrate the history of diverse communities, we foster an environment where students feel safe to learn and safe to be themselves. Just last week in this room, the committee heard from many parents about the devastating impact bullying and mental health struggles have had on students. According to the Trevor Project, LGBTQ youth who experience anti-LGBTQ victimization, including being physically threatened or harmed or discriminated against, reported more than twice the rate of attempting suicide in the past year compared to those who did not have any of those anti-LGBTQ experiences. There is so much to be gained by treating LGBTQ youth with compassion, care, and support, not the least of which is we save lives.
Okay.
All children deserve to feel safe, welcome, and included in their classrooms. This legislation could have negative impact on our children's health and well-being. This legislation will also place undue burden on teachers amidst a dire teacher shortage and the Great Resignation. Teachers are balancing so much, and trying to maintain inclusive, welcoming classrooms should not come with fear of being fined or losing certification. All children are welcome at Compass Rose, and all children are celebrated. We ask that we may continue to cultivate safe, accepting spaces for all. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the witness?
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair calls Sarah Miller Fellows. Sarah Miller Fellows.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah Miller Fellows. I show you as Dr.
Yes,
Miller?
that's
Okay.
Dr. Miller Fellows.
Okay. Girls Empowerment Network and yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
And I show you against the bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you may speak.
Okay. Hello, Chair Buckley and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dr. Sarah Miller Fellows. I'm the Director of Impact at Girls Empowerment Network, and I'm also the mother of a kindergartner and a third grader at Round Rock ISD. I'm deeply concerned about the implications of HB 1507, and I urge you to oppose this bill. I know that this committee is committed to reducing the suicide rates in Texas, and I thank you for the passing of two impactful bills last session that are now signed into law. SB 279 that includes suicide prevention information on student ID cards, and HB 4074, which helps the state collect suicide data. A staggering 45% of LGBTQ high school students have considered attempting suicide in the past year. This is 3 times the rate of heterosexual students. Having an affirming school environment has been identified as one of the most effective strategies for limiting these suicide rates. For example, youth who report their pronouns respected by the people in their lives attempted suicide at half the rate of those who did not. Research continues to show that LGBTQ students who attend schools with curriculums that are inclusive of LGBTQ people, history, and events experience a better school climate and improved academic outcomes. It is essential that all of our students see their identities supported and celebrated in their schools. I'm also deeply concerned about the impact HB 1507 would have on the teacher hiring and retention crisis in our state. If passed, this bill includes a fine of up to $10,000. As Representative Allen noted, the average teacher, first-year teacher's salary is $38,000, so that's a quarter of that salary. And also the potential loss of a teaching license for teachers who violate the statute. In a state that's already in dire need of teachers, the passage of this bill would remove qualified and caring teachers for doing nothing more than supporting and uplifting their students. As a parent and also as somebody who works in our schools, I'm deeply concerned about the impact of HB 1507 on our students and our schools, and I urge you to oppose this bill. And I thank you all for your time, and I appreciate your consideration of this matter.
All right. Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? Representative Talarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. You said you have a kindergarten in Round Rock ISD?
Yes, a kindergartner and a third grader.
Wonderful. And Round Rock ISD is the district I grew up in, district
Yes.
I represent. I got a message from a constituent that had a picture of one of the assignments during Pride Week for a kindergartner. So I thought that was helpful, and I want to make sure this is reflective of your experience as a parent.
Yeah.
The assignment was drawing a picture of two different people, and it said, same opinion or different opinion, you matter, which I love. We could use that in the Texas legislature.
I agree. It's what we try to teach our kids at home, and I think we need a lot more of that in our schools.
Right. And I know there was testimony earlier about concerns about, more sex ed topics in those early grades. And again, Texas standards don't have sex ed in those grades. But this kind of instruction, which is basic, just kind of empathy, kindness, being nice, sharing, these are things that a kindergartner or a third grader should learn. Is that your opinion as a parent?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Members, any more questions? All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Chair calls Carrie Moore, Texas Education 911, and citizens, county citizens defending freedom and yourself. Carrie Moore. Okay. We'll let the record show that Carrie Moore of Texas Education 911 and County Citizens Defending Freedom and herself will be shown for the bill. Chair calls Ken Zarifas. Okay. Where are we at?
We can call her up.
Okay. All right. We'll come back. Okay. All right. We show you, this is Ken Zarifas, Education Austin, and yourself. We show you registered as Ken Zarifas.
Zarifas, yeah.
Sorry, Zarifas.
No,
we show you registered as Ken Zarifas on behalf of Education Austin and yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Buckley, and thank you for members of the board committee. My name's Ken Zarifas. I'm president of Education Austin, the employee union for AISD teachers and school employees. I'm also a parent of a third grader. I also taught for 12 years in a middle school. What I understand in terms of public education and what a teacher's role is, I experienced it as a student in Creston, Iowa, and experienced it as a teacher in Austin, Texas, is that teaching is very broad. We support a lot of needs in the classroom. We don't know what the kids are coming into the classroom with. We don't know their perspectives and their family's perspective. It's not my place to judge those things as a teacher. It's my place to embrace who they are and to help them. As a teacher, it was very important that I support every one of my kids regardless. And we had issues around LGBTQIA, but also other issues in terms of understanding who I am as a human being, which are some of the struggles I went through as a young man and as a student in Creston, Iowa, and I had teachers that were there to help and support me. So we need to support. We cannot wait until a kid is in crisis and hope that there's a counselor. That's not the way education works. We embrace them from the minute they step into our schools to let them know they're seen and heard and understood. I'm also a father of a third grader and a daughter who's lesbian. Don't tell me that she's wrong. Don't tell me that what she is not right, because that is wrong. That's not inclusive. That is not love. When we talk about a third grader, I get it. I get it. But just because a person doesn't think this is right and has an opinion doesn't make it so. And it's important that we understand more deeply rather than hearsay what's happening in a classroom so that we can make judgments and legislate from an informed position. It's important that we embrace our children in the classroom. My third grade son came home after the Cesar Chavez March where there was a dance group. And in that dance group, he said to me, he said, Daddy, there was someone in the cheer group that was dancing that was born a boy. But he is a girl now, and he said, because of his gender or her gender, he said, that's their choice. They get to choose that. Nobody in this committee and nobody in this legislature should dictate what a person chooses for themselves. We don't have to like it. We can hate it, but we shouldn't legislate against it because of our hate and dislike. We should embrace differences, just like every one of your teachers, I'm sure, did when you were in school. Thank you.
Members, any questions for this witness? All right, Representative Hinojosa.
Mr. Zarafis, thank you for joining us today. I'm so glad that you are sharing your experience and expertise with us as somebody deeply connected to the goings-on in Austin ISD. We heard earlier testimony about sex ed being taught in third grade, and I don't have insight into that. We heard from the dais here that actually we don't teach sex ed in those younger grades. I'm wondering if you can speak to that. I've also been told, let me just acknowledge, I think it is so important that we do legislate from a place of knowledge and not just hearsay, because there's a lot out there that we all hear, but we need to know what the facts are. And so I'm asking you, as someone who is deeply connected to the goings-on in Austin ISD, if this is true, that in our human sexuality curriculum, there was a vetting process over several years with a committee comprised of parents, caregivers, and teachers, with parents having continuous opportunity to give feedback and view all the content. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. That's what I found very confusing about that testimony. Because I know there was a process of having lots of opportunity to opt in, not opt in, to be able to share an opinion, to participate. There were those opportunities. And it took matter of fact, there was frustration that it took so long to process, but they wanted to make sure and get it right. And so I think what's important here, Representative Hinojosa, is that as a parent, I must be involved in my child's education. It's my responsibility as a parent. If I'm not aware of something going on, that's on me. If I have an opportunity to opt out of something, if I have a concern about a curriculum, then I need to participate in the process and opt my child out. That's my responsibility. As an 8th grade language arts teacher, I would teach books, and there was on occasion, parents would have a problem with the book that I was teaching. Well, I would ask them to have a meeting with me. So we'd sit down and we'd discuss the book, and one of two things would happen. One, they would say, oh, I get it. That's okay, the book's all right. Or two, they would say, no, I'm really not comfortable with that. And so we would find another book. I respected that. And we met at a place where we both informed each other of our perspective and came up with a solution. We didn't dictate one way or another. We worked together. This bill I don't see as working together. I see it as dictating and really problematic for our kids. You're welcome.
Members, any more questions for this witness? All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Chair calls Nina Trujillo. We show you registered as Nina Trujillo on behalf of yourself, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Nina Trujillo, and I am here as a former student of Austin Independent School District and as someone who identifies as a lesbian. I was the president of 2 chapters of the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, or now the Gay Sexuality Alliance, during my time in high school. This bill is extremely detrimental not only to teachers and students, but also the general perception of the queer community. As a student, I was blessed with a supportive family and friends. Not all of my peers had that. When you are on the LGBTQIA spectrum, there is an innate fear that comes with just existing. That is why it's important not only to have peers that support you, but also adults who understand your specific problems and can guide you to the resources you need. Sometimes a teacher is the only person a student can trust in their lives. This bill destroys the ability for teachers to create a safe space for children, and in its place creates fear and silence. What is this teaching them? It openly says LGBTQIA rights are a taboo, so bad that I can't even speak about it without getting in trouble. This is a step backwards. I was lucky to have access to adults who could answer my questions, not only about myself, but also the experiences of other people. I was able to understand who I am and who I am not because of this. I didn't have to repress myself and figure out my identity later in life. Knowledge is not a bad thing, and it doesn't always pertain to you. You can be cis and straight, learn about a gay man or woman, and still be cis and straight. The idea that learning about queer rights can magically turn someone gay is ridiculous. This is something about me that will never change. I just got the chance to learn who I was faster. The problem is not teachers indoctrinating kids to a gay or trans lifestyle. The problem is removing safe spaces for kids to express themselves. I hope that the committee can see the harmful message that this would send out to everyone who is on the queer spectrum, and ultimately the hateful ideology this stems from. Being gay is not taboo, it is just who I am.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right, thank you for being here. Chair calls Daniel Dower, Educators in Solidarity. Okay, chair calls Ricardo Martinez. Oh. Okay. No. Okay. Daniel Dower. Can we go backwards?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back. Okay. Can we go backwards?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we show you registered as Daniel Dower on behalf of Educators in Solidarity, and you'll be testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Buckley, and honorable members of the House Public Education Committee. My name is Dan Dower. I'm providing this testimony on HB 1507 on behalf of Educators in Solidarity. Educators in Solidarity is a group of educators working to build our collective capacity as anti-racist and anti-discriminatory teachers through activism, advocacy, and outreach. HB 1507 is an unnecessarily cruel and harmful bill that sets out to solve a problem that doesn't exist. This bill will make our public schools more hostile environments for our LGBTQ+ students and will place excessive stress on teachers at a time when we're facing a statewide teacher shortage. As it's currently written, HB 1507 fails to define several key terms in the bill text. It's not clear what exactly falls under the category of a program or what exactly celebrating means. As others have mentioned today, this could mean banning things like Valentine's Day celebrations, homecoming courts, baby showers for teachers. It's also a problem that this bill imposes sanctions on teachers, including fining educators up to $10,000, threatening revocation of their license. This is only going to cause more fear and anxiety among our state's teachers. As you all know, we're facing a historic teacher shortage. Why are we adding yet another concern to teachers' plates at a time when we should be doing everything that we can to get more teachers into our classrooms? In addition to classroom instruction, lesson planning, all the other things that teachers do, one of the many responsibilities we have is to make our schools safe and inclusive spaces for all of our students. When students feel like their identities are affirmed, they're more likely to attend school and improve their academic performance. Multiple school climate surveys have found, however, that the vast majority of LGBTQ+ students in Texas are victimized while at school, with many reporting hearing frequent homophobic remarks, experiencing verbal and physical harassment based on their sexual orientation and gender expression. As a teacher, it was something that I dealt with all the time, telling students to say things like, not to use the word gay as an insult, right? Not to talk about groups of students, in ways that were disrespectful. Banning pride celebrations would only make it harder for teachers to intervene against this type of bullying, right? It throws up challenges and roadblocks to helping students feel safe and included at school, and it makes it harder for teachers to address that type of anti-LGBTQ+ bullying. Another thing I should note, every year thriving, successful businesses across our state celebrate Pride as a way to make all of their employees and customers feel valued. If we want our schools to prepare our students for the future, it makes sense to model our school celebrations of our students' identities on the practices of the business community, which every year celebrate Pride without incident. It's not a problem. Everybody has a good time. So a couple of recommendations I would offer. First, if there is a group of parents who have specific issues about their children participating in these celebrations, give them an avenue to opt out. Let everybody else celebrate. There's no reason for a blanket ban to prevent this from happening. And second, eliminate the language that imposes fines or threatens certification of a teacher. This is only going to add more stress to teachers, driving them out of profession. Teachers are already overwhelmed. This just gives them one more thing to worry about. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for this witness? All right. Thank you for being here. Where are we going to now? Okay. Chair calls Ricardo Martinez, Equality Texas himself. Ricardo Martinez. Okay, the record will show that Ricardo Martinez of Equality Texas, and on behalf of himself, will be shown against the bill. Can I just call her? Okay. Chair calls Carrie Moore. All right, we show you registered as Carrie Moore on behalf of Texas Education 911 and County Citizens Defending Freedom and yourself. You'll be testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, committee members. Today, our children cannot read, they cannot write, they cannot do basic math. All of the standardized tests are showing that our scores are abysmal, much less no accurate history. Our reading, writing, math scores across Texas at best are staying stagnant, if not declining. We have thrown money, electronics, administration, counseling, social emotional learning, CRT, DEI, comprehensive sex education at it, but our children's basic abilities continue to decline, or at best stay stagnant. We need to get back to providing stability by teaching the basics and stop the instability of focusing on our genitals and our sexuality. Protect our kids by teaching them how to add, subtract, multiply, read, write, and learn how to thrive in our society. Once they're proficient at these basics, then we can talk about the rest. Thank you.
All right. Members, any question for this witness? Representative Tallarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also very concerned about students' proficiency in reading, writing, and math, something I want us to focus more on in these committee hearings. You're aware that the research is pretty clear that the more time students are in class or in school, their academic performance tends to increase. The more time they're in class learning about reading, writing, and arithmetic, the more they're going to learn. You're aware of that?
The more time they spend on reading, writing, and arithmetic, the more they will learn those subjects.
Great. You know that most school districts take about 2 weeks off for Christmas break. Would you recommend us having students work through Christmas break in order to catch them up?
No.
Why not?
They need a break. They need recess. They need lunchtime. Right now, our lunch times and our recesses are being inundated with things like interventions for social emotional learning issues. And the more time we spend on movie days or anything else that's not reading, writing, and math related is
it important for students to have time to celebrate religious holidays?
Sure.
Why?
When?
Why?
Because it's part of who they are.
Great.
But we don't need it during school days, and we don't need it on a regular basis.
But you're okay with
can do
taking
it at
time,
home.
yeah, and you're okay with taking time out of the school year calendar to make time for those holidays, like we do for Christmas or Easter.
We're not talking about our genitals or our sexuality.
I don't think anyone here is talking about that either. Thank you for being here.
All right, members, any more questions for this witness? All right, thank you for being here. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1507?
You just called me.
Yep.
Hi, I have really bad luck.
Hold up just one second.
I was in the bathroom.
Yep.
Rebelling.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Show you. Yeah, we're probably going to have to stop here and then come back after we go to the floor, because we're up against a hard stop here to go to the floor. So
I have 3 minutes. Less.
We have 3 minutes too. We cannot go
less. Promise.
You better go fast.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
No disrespect.
No
Show
worries.
your registers, Ricardo Martinez, on behalf of Equality Texas and yourself, testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Ricardo Martinez. I'm the CEO of Equality Texas, and I'm here testifying on behalf of myself and Equality Texas in opposition to HB 1507. As we all know, it's important that we create a school environment where all students can succeed. Success is often linked to a child's sense of school belonging. When kids belong, academic performance, attendance, self-esteem, they improve, and kids flourish. For students to succeed, students should feel safe in school. HB 1507 does the exact opposite of this. It threatens LGBTQ students' ability to show up, to learn, and graduate like all other students. According to a 2023 survey by GLSEN, a national school climate survey, the vast majority of LGBTQ students feel unsafe in school. But it's more than just a feeling. 97% of them report hearing homophobic remarks, and 83% of them report hearing transphobic remarks in schools. And these remarks are not only from students, they report hearing homophobic remarks from their teachers and staff. So imagine being a student in this environment and having lawmakers propose such a broad bill that would potentially eliminate the places where you feel safest and limit how supportive teachers could be. Filing bills like this are not harmless actions. The legislation stigmatizes LGBTQ people, it isolates LGBTQ kids, and makes teachers fearful of providing a safe and inclusive classroom. The hostile school
Martino,
environment.
I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to have to go into recess to get to the floor.
Sure.
And so we'll take this up.
Do I get to come back from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, members, it looks like we'll need to stop here for the morning. If there's no objection, House Bill 1507 will be left pending. If there's no objection, the committee will stand in recess until final adjournment or recess of the House or during reading and referral of bills if permission is granted. The chair hears no objection. The Committee on Public Education now stands in recess.